Imagine, it's 1990, the Genesis has been around for a couple of months and is dominating the market with its incredible 16-bit graphics and popular games like Altered Beast, Space Harrier 2, and Golden Axe. Then, Nintendo unveils the Super Nintendo and some of its games, and you see F-Zero. Minds were blown. Nobody had seen graphics like this at the time, and Nintendo proves once again that they can do what Sega can't. While it is true that F-Zero is basically a glorified tech demo to show off the capabilities of the SNES in Mode 7, calling it that is an insult to the fantastic game built around it. In 2560, a new form of F1 racing is born from the boredom of millionaires known as F-Zero Racing. Amidst these dangerous futuristic races are your 4 selectable characters: Dr. Stewart, Pico, Samurai Goro, and of course, Captain Falcon. Each character's ships have different attributes like acceleration time, top speed, and handling, so choose wisely. From here, you have the choice of Knight League, Queen League, and King League, all of which consist of 5 levels and increase in difficulty by rank. What's most important in a racing game? The sense of speed. You want to feel like you're unstoppably fast, and F-Zero, despite being 20 years old, still delivers this feeling of immense speed. It's always satisfying to pass an opponent and leave them in the dust, or to see their sprites slowly become bigger as you catch up to snag a better position. The action is in-your-face fast on every level as tracks are fashioned with tight turns, speed boost, small corridors, and long straightaways and more for you to bolt and weave through. There's a vast array of colorful courses taking you all over the place, like the futuristic skylines of Mute City and Port Town, to the vast emptiness of Big Blue and Sand Ocean, as well as the lava-filled nightmare that is Firefield, all of which are gloriously presented in stunning Mode 7. Stage after stage, they throw new gimmicks at you which you must adapt to if you want the gold. From the currents of Deathwind to the magnetic poles in Port Town, each ploy keeps you on the edge of your seat as you try and maintain your position. Not to mention, there's plenty of obstacles to avoid, like pits of death, bombs, speed reducers, track sidings, and other racers with low health. Yep, that's right, ships have life meters, and once they're depleted, you die. Thankfully, each level has these flashing panels that signify a pit, where you can regain health if needed, but it may not always be enough health to last to your next lap, so taking minimal damage and mastering each track is a must by the end of the game. Levels have just the right amount of challenge and nuance that by the second or third lap you should be familiar with all of its traps and start climbing towards the top of the ranks if you aren't already there. Each track flows magnificently, making sure the sense of speed and tension is hardly ever lost. Flying down straightaways and dashing around corners has never been more fun thanks to the fantastic controls. What really makes them perfect is the ability to lean further into your turn by pressing the shoulder buttons. This makes 90-degree turns and small curves easier to navigate without losing much speed. Pressing down while launching off of ramps will boost your airtime, which is how you're supposed to get over that infamous jump in Whiteland 2. It actually took me forever to find this out. If you have some catching up to do at any point during a race, you're not totally out of luck, as pressing B will activate a speed boost if you have one. Make sure to use these sparingly though, as you only have 3 and can regain one for each lap you finish first. What great racing game is complete without a bumping soundtrack? F-Zero has one of the best soundtracks to grace a racing game ever in my opinion. All tunes are phenomenally composed and fit the stages beautifully. Each one feels like a shot of adrenaline and makes you want to go as fast as possible and come out on top. Some tunes do scale the high octane intensity back a little bit for a more laid back type feel, which you'd think would be a bad idea as that's a pretty stark contrast to the action of the game, but it works. It's a nice breather that breaks up the tension and keeps the soundtrack from being one note for the whole game. The opening bit of the Mute City theme perfectly encapsulates the feeling of starting a race. That lead synth on Big Blue fucking rips like no other. Deathwind has that sinister tone to it which fits perfect since I'm always on edge during the level because I'm usually aching for more health. And let's not forget the wonderfully groovy bass lines of Silence. Despite Whiteland 1 and 2 sharing the same theme, they do actually have some minor differences in instrument choice, which is something I've never noticed before because I'm usually too busy trying not to fall to my doom. Composers Yumiko Kanki and Naoto Ishida deserve an award for this masterpiece of a soundtrack. There was a sequel to F-Zero on the SNES called BS F-Zero Grand Prix 2, but only in Japan, available via the Satellaview, which was a short-lived broadcasting service where games would be downloadable via satellite. This was a joint venture by Nintendo and St. Giga. Really, the Satellaview is a whole video unto itself, so I'll skip over the details for now and save that for another day. The sequel is much of the same, the biggest difference being the redesigned ship models and the 5 new levels comprising of a new cup. Levels have a bit more flair than seen in the original game, with lots of jumps and platforms making risky shortcuts as well as a few new gimmicks. Backgrounds have been touched up, adding little details here and there too. The craziest thing about this game is the 1997 release date. The N64 was out at this point and the PlayStation and Saturn were well into their life cycles. Of course, this never had an official cart release, so it wasn't super risky of Nintendo to produce this at such a late date in the SNES's life cycle, but it boggles my mind that Nintendo was still developing for the SNES at this point. Really, the game is more of the same offered in the original and comes highly recommended. ROMs are easy to find online, but if you're against that type of thing, then a reproduction cart commands about $50, which is a bit pricey for 5 new stages. There are of course more sequels like F-Zero X for the N64, F-Zero GX on the GameCube, and a couple of sequels on the Game Boy. All are awesome games in their own right, which I'll have to cover in future episodes. F-Zero is a classic racing game and one hell of a title for the almighty Super Nintendo. As for racing games on the SNES, it's probably only topped by Super Mario Kart because of its 2-player capability. Many games have tried to copy its success and failed, which goes to show that F-Zero truly is a fantastic game absolutely worth owning for any retro racing fan or SNES elitist. Although if you're one of those two, I'm probably just preaching to the choir. So really this review is for those who may be fans of the sequels who never gone back to play the original, or retro gamers who aren't big on racing games. Believe me, this game is great, so give it a go. For those looking for a physical cart, it's a real cheap buy, typically going for about $10 as the game is not hard to come by. Hell, I got my copy factory sealed for $15 about 5 years ago. I would recommend getting it in box as it comes with an awesome comic about Captain Falcon in the manual. Really nice touch on Nintendo's part. Anyways, that's F-Zero. Snag a copy if you don't already have one, and take a wild ride in the future of racing.